This is Magic the Gathering Deck Builder, designing new Magic decks every single day. And I'm your host, DB. Alright folks, I'm here today with a nice little Magosi combo deck. It uses Magosi the Water Veil to give you infinite turns. Now, Magosi is a little hard to work with, it has a lot of requirements on it, but I've found a little way around those requirements. We're going to start it off obviously with Magosi. The next part of this combo is Rings of Brighthearth. Rings of Brighthearth gives you the ability to pay 2 and copy any activated ability. Now not only can this work with Magosi, it also works with Garruk Wildspeaker. Garruk allows us to either +1 to untap 2 target lands or -1 to put a 3/3 green beast creature token onto the battlefield. And his ulti allows us to do a -4, and basically we get overrun on a stick. So the combo between these three cards is a little complicated, and after this video I'm going to go through a little demonstration of the combo. But essentially what it does is you can pay a blue and tap to put an Eon counter on Magosi the Water Veil and skip your next turn. Then you can use Garruk's Plus to untap Magosi and untap a land that taps for 2 mana, and then tap that land in order to pay 2 to activate Rings of Brighthearth. Rings of Brighthearth will copy the +1 to untap 2 lands. We will end up untapping the Magosi, untapping the land that paid for the Rings of Brighthearth, and then we can tap Magosi to remove the Eon counter from it, take an extra turn, and then we can tap the land that taps for 2 mana in order to activate Rings of Brighthearth again, which would double the number of extra turns we take, making a net of +1 extra turn. We can do this every turn, and it's going to give us infinite extra turns. Now, how are we going to get this started? Well, to begin with, we're going to need 4 Magosis. Obviously, this is our main combo piece. We're going to want to dig into it as fast as possible and turn it on. We need 4 Rings of Brighthearth because this is what gives us the ability to make our extra turns. And finally, we're going to go with 3 Garruk Wildspeakers. 4 would be nice, but realistically 3 is more than enough, and we're going to have other things in the deck that can do the same thing. So we're going to start with 3. And then we're going to move on to the main tutor card for the deck, Ancient Stirrings. Ancient Stirrings is 1 green. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a colorless card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So we can use Ancient Stirrings to dig into our Rings of Brighthearth or our Magosi the Water Veil. So we want to have 4 of those. Next up we have Tracker's Instincts. Tracker's Instincts is 1 and a green for sorcery speed. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put a creature card from among them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Well, how does this help us? Eternal Witness. That's how. Eternal Witness enters the battlefield. Return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Therefore, we can cast Tracker's Instincts, revealing the top 4. If we reveal an Eternal Witness and any of our combo pieces, specifically Garruk, because Planeswalker tutoring is a little difficult, then we can net our piece in our hand. We're going to go ahead and use 2 Tracker's Instincts because although it is a great card, we have other plans for this deck, and like I said, we're going to have other pieces that can do the same job as Garruk. We're going to do 4 Eternal Witnesses because it also combos well with another piece in our deck that we'll get to later. And the next card we have is Augur of Bolas. Augur of Bolas says when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal an instant or sorcery card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So we can use Tracker's Instincts, and if we don't net Eternal Witness, then we can get an Augur of Bolas, and that will allow us to dig for another instant or sorcery. That instant or sorcery could be Tracker's Instincts, or it could be Ancient Stirrings, or it could be our other combo piece that I said works well with Eternal Witness. We're going to use 2 Augur of Bolases. Again, like I said, just like Tracker's Instincts, it's not the real juice of the combo, it just helps set it off, so 2 should be more than enough. Finally, we're going to go with Primeval Titan. Primeval Titan can be pulled into with Tracker's Instincts. It also can be pulled into with our final combo piece, and we're only going to do 1 of Primeval Titan. The big issue with Primeval Titan is it can pull Magosi onto the field. Finally, our last combo piece is Primal Command. Primal Command is essentially our control card in the deck. This is how we stop our opponents from getting their plan off before we can get ours off. It has 4 different abilities. We choose 2 of them. The abilities are as follows. Target player gains 7 life, or put target non-creature permanent on top of its owner's library, or target player shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library, or search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So, as we've stated before, this can pull our Eternal Witness. It can also pull our Primeval Titan. It can also pull the other creatures in the deck. On top of that, it can shuffle either ours or our opponent's graveyard back into their libraries. The main focus on this card is the put target non-creature permanent on top of its owner's library. That will allow us to actually put our opponent's lands on top of their library, which is essentially a time walk. We're going to go ahead and run 4 Primal Commands, and the beauty of Primal Command is it combos real well with Eternal Witness, like I said earlier. We can time walk our opponent and then tutor out an Eternal Witness, and then we can play the Eternal Witness, pulling the Primal Command back to our hand, and we can continue to do that. That does take a lot of mana. That gets us into the rest of the deck. Now, the next card on the deck is Voyaging Satyr. Tap to untap target land. This obviously will work well with Magosi that can do the same thing that Garruk can do. On top of that, it's ramp. So we're going to run 4 Voyaging Satyrs. We're also going to run Arbor Elf. It cannot untap the Magosi, but it, along with the next piece in the deck, can give us the ability to play Garruk on turn 2. So we're going to run 4 of it. The next 2 cards I have for you are Utopia Sprawl and Fertile Ground. These are enchantments. Utopia Sprawl says when it comes into play, choose a color, and it can only enchant a forest. Whenever enchanted forest is tapped for mana, its controller adds 1 mana of the chosen color to his or her mana pool. Fertile Ground, enchant land. Whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds 1 mana of any color to his or her mana pool. So obviously this is using the Arbor of Utopia Sprawl combo, which puts Garruk Wildspeaker into play on turn 2. We'll go into more of that later, but the point here is we want to run 4 Utopia Sprawl and Fertile Ground. After that, the next card is Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. This will give us the ability to use Voyaging Satyr or Garruk Wildspeaker to make insane amounts of mana in the mid to late game. We're going to run 2 of those. On top of that, we have Ghost Quarter. Ghost Quarter has tap to add a colorless to your mana pool, or tap, sacrifice Ghost Quarter, destroy target land. Its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle his or her library. So we've got land destruction here. And we're going to go ahead and run 2 of those. And finally, in the special land department, we have Misty Rainforest and Breeding Pool. We run 4 of each of those. That's going to give us all the green and or blue mana we need, besides Magosi, which can double as an island. Just comes into play tapped, which, as we've said before, isn't too much a problem with this deck. Then we just need to go ahead and play our basic lands, which we're just going to put 4 forests in that spot, and we have our 60. Obviously, it's a bit of a complicated deck. There are a lot of interactions going on here, and trying to explain all of them would be very difficult, but I can go ahead and just show you the basics of the deck. We're going to throw up a little example here. This is what one might call the nut draw, or the perfect hand in this deck. Not too complicated, but it can get a little hairy, so let me walk you through it. Let's say it's your turn 1, and you've drawn your perfect hand. Well, here's how you play it out. Turn 1, you're going to play your Breeding Pool. You're going to leave it untapped, losing 2 life. Not too big of an issue when you see where this is going. You're going to tap that Breeding Pool, adding a green to your mana pool, and use that green to play an Arbor Elf. Then you're going to pass the turn. Turn 2 comes around, and you're going to play a forest. You're going to tap that forest, playing Utopia Sprawl onto your Breeding Pool, and you're going to name blue. Then you're going to tap that Breeding Pool, adding a green and a blue to your mana pool. Then you're going to tap your Arbor Elf, which is going to untap your Breeding Pool, and you're going to tap it again, coming up to 2 green and 2 blue in your mana pool. You're going to use that 4 mana to play Garruk Wildspeaker. You're going to plus Garruk Wildspeaker, which is going to untap your Breeding Pool and your forest. You're then going to tap your Breeding Pool and your forest to play Rings of Brighthearth. And you're going to pass the turn. As your turn 3 comes around, you're going to start off by playing Magosi the Water Veil tapped, and then you're going to tap your Breeding Pool, adding a green and a blue to your mana pool, and then you're going to plus 1 Garruk, untapping 2 target lands. But before it resolves, you're going to use the green and blue in your mana pool to activate Rings of Brighthearth's ability, putting a second untapped 2 target lands effect onto your stack. You're going to let the first one resolve. That's going to untap your Breeding Pool and your Magosi. You're then going to tap your Breeding Pool, adding a green and a blue to your mana pool. You're going to use that blue to tap Magosi and put an Eon counter on it. That's going to make you skip your next turn. But we're then going to use the next Garruk's plus 1 ability to untap Magosi and Breeding Pool again. This is going to give us the ability to tap Magosi, remove the Eon counter from it, return it to our hands, and take an extra turn after this one. Now we're going to go ahead and tap that Breeding Pool for 2 mana, activating Rings of Brightheart's ability, and that's going to mean that Magosi's activated ability of take an extra turn after this one is doubled. We're going to let both of those resolve, and now we're sitting in the middle of our 3rd turn with a net gain of +1 turns. And the fact that we still have Magosi in our hand means that we can play it back down next turn, gain an extra turn again, continue this way until we have win condition. And since we have a ton of creatures, we've got a Primeval Titan, etc., etc., should be fairly easy to get to that win condition. Alright guys, that is the Magosi Infinite Combo deck. Tell me what you think about it in the comments. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you really liked it, and as always, I'm DB, signing up.